There is a very important thing for everybody to know about, and it is called the Day of Wrath, also known as NVIDIA. Have you heard of this? NVIDIA, the video game leader and dealer of technology, who plays the dreidel with the person. In other words, takes the person who likes the games, the gamies, right? And uses the artificial intelligence to make you into a leader or a dealer, like clay, right? And the goal is to make the person like a clay and mold them and shape them. And NVIDIA can be translated to the day of envy, right? See, envy, dia, day of envy, right? Dia is day, envy, right? This day of envy can also be attributed to biblical, let's call it biblical phraseology, known as the Day of Wrath, right? The Day of Wrath is also known as the Day of Vengeance, also known as the Day of Revenge, and perhaps you've heard of the Trans Day of Revenge, right? This was a holiday, you can look it up, that was canceled, which the trans community would take revenge onto the oppressive that do not support the ideology. But we need to go back and let's account for this. The day of wrath, the day of envy, the day of vengeance, the day of revenge, right? These are the day of a person's life in which the manipulators, which are those who manipulate man, right? They hope that they will get, through instigation, provocation, and various different witchcraft spells, like to stun you, to freeze you, to confuse you, to bomb you, to love bomb you, ultimately cause you spiritual disruption due to a darkening of the soul, by which a person cannot keep their composure under pressure, and then they have the breakdown, nervous breakdown, physical breakdown, mental breakdown, and then the person will then eat too much, create a lot of bad habits like alcoholism. Have you seen an alcoholic? Have you seen a Catholic? A Catholic see an alcoholic? Oh. Or maybe a cataholic. Maybe he's addicted to the pussycat, right? And what is the reputation of the Catholics? Is to be very abusive to their wife and drinky, too much. And we know this because they're the ones that, you must drink the blood of Jesus, but it is wine, right? And then make sure you eat a little bit too, so they want you to make sure you eat and drink a lot like the Italians, right? But the thing is, this day of wrath, this day of vengeance, this trans day of revenge, the day of wrath, the day of envy, ultimately can be resolved through the understanding and comprehension of the Stoic version of the Christianity, whereby a person does not take it personally when all of the instigation and the provocation and the freeze spells and the stun spells and the confusion and the bombs and whether the bomb is painful or whether it is nice, ultimately these are just attempts to prevent the one who denies all from making it out of the lion's den, right? because the one who denies all is Daniel, and they put him into the lion's den, right? And that is a den of people who need to lie on, and they lie on, and they lie on, right? So you need to deny all faiths, operate from outside of the faith, because all of the scripture is profitable by doctrine, which means that whether it's real or whether it's false, we all have what is called the reptilian brain, right? The reptilian brain is the Bible written on your heart. It is the most basic and primal brain that allows a person to be like a snake, right? And they do not like the snake in the Bible, right? Because the snake, he is a crafty one. He whines, he climbs, he constricts, sucks the life out of you, right? The others, he bites it, he poisons you, right? And this is the thing that the Bible does not like it. But noticed that it was the Moses who made the public display, or the public display of the cross. Boop! Put it in the ground, and then put the snake over it, and told the people that if you just look at the snake, the dead snake, then it will heal you from the bite of the snake, right? But it was the Hezekiah, right, who took the public display down. And I will try to rack the memory of the name of the it is eluding me at the moment, but the name of the what is it? I cannot come with it. It is a name. But I'm telling you, this is also found on every EMT. Right? You find the ambulance, you find the asterisk, or you find the cross with this snake wrapped around it, right? This is the big concern, is that they find the goody two-shoes, and then the snake wraps itself around it, right? The thing about it is, the snake is just the creation of the Lord. The creation of the source creator has determined that the snake would be a very crafty animal. The thing about the snake, it has a bunghole, right? We all kind of have an exit place, right? And the snake has one, and it is called the Coca-Cola. Oh, I'm sorry. Called the cloaca, right? So look up the cloaca, right? That is the bunghole of the snake. And it is also the name of the Coca-Cola, right? If you just kind of look at the Coca-Cola and the cloaca, right? And, this Coca-Cola, it's coming from the land of the Swiss, also known as the Switzerland, right? And the colors is the red and the white, and also that the colors of the Ku Klux Klan is the red and the white, and the Nazi Party is the red and the white, right? And the black, right? So they fashion themselves as the snake. They're wearing the cloaca, and you notice that they're also wearing the hat of the wizard, and they call it the Grand Wizard, right? And the Grand Wizard of the KKK is a magician. He is teaching of the language and the signs and the symbols and the codes and the cues to the crew, and they stay under the hood, and because they're under the hood, you do not know the race. So it is possible that many times in the past, the people of the group, they have different factions and different sleeper cells. But when you look at the history of the clan, at one time, there was estimated millions in the 1920s and 30s of the Klan members, right? But you must put it into perspective, right? Because if they say that there was 3 million Klansmen and women, there is like very, very many states that have 3 million people. Like, for example, the state of Iowa has 3 million people. That would mean that there was enough Klansmen and women at one time in the 20s and 30s to occupy all of the current state of Iowa. Now, this is 100 years ago. Think about it. Why would anybody leave the Klan when you get the privilege of being under the hood? And of course, you've gone through initiation to achieve the status, and you are very well hidden from the public. In any event, we must look at the situation being that the Coca-Cola is the cloaca, right? The cloaca, right? Using the immigration policies in the 20s and 30s to import many of the Nazis into the United States. Remember, the Nazis are not the Nazis. They are the party that you cannot see, right? Like it, the OKK. Hey, how you doing? And the giant knot in one eye. Yeah, hey, maybe that's a knot in one eye. I don't know, but it ain't this, because when you did this to me, there was really no knot. I'd get no blackie, not at all. In fact, I didn't even have a little bit of a bruise. Get it? Your name is Bruce? Did you get the bruise? Funny. What is the funny? That is when you're having the sexual, right? Your knee is having fun, right? Yeah. So, make sure that you watch out for these people. You are not like the guy in the Bible named Legion who says, my name is Legion, we are many. He was talking about legions of religions, creating more religions, right? You don't need a religion, because the Jesus Christ, who you're serving under the religion, if you actually read the Texas, you would see that the Aztecs and the Texas are very similar, right? It's just Aztecs, right? The thing is, you don't want to end up in a text against standoff with anybody, right? They must come and show you the love, show you the respect, not like you send the text and like 10 days later, maybe the Misty come back to you, or maybe, you just don't get the text, or even they even bother to call you to hear your voice. Under law, this is called the disrespect, right? We don't like the disrespect, right? We like the respect, right? And the Klan, they do this thing, right? Where they like to become Hebrews, right? Which are like rulers. They are like lawyers, right? Not like lawyers, like lores, right? Lore. Like when you go fishing, you have a cast, right? And at the end of the cast, you have the line, right? And at the end of the line, you find the lore, right? And when you find the lore is used to create a lore, right? So you must find the people in your life that have a lot of allure and understand that they are most likely attached to a line that leads to a cast of characters seeking that are real. In their mind, they are real, and they're reeling you in, right? And that's why when you go to the south, you meet a man named Wyatt, right? Because the Wyatt is like, why? Right? Why? And Wyatt, right? the point is that he's a lore, because he's like, why eat, right? Like white, right? Like Wyatt is like why eat, right? So the thing is that a lot of these names, they are the codes, they are the cues. You have to understand, this is why you come to the dark sideshow goalie, right? Because I will help you with the transliteration, right? It doesn't matter whether I talk with a New York Italian accent, or I talk like I talk, which is obviously New York, right? And some people, they get this thing called dissociative identity disorder, right? Where they can flip it from one personality to the other personality, and for each one of these voices that they produce, there's a whole personality that goes along with it, and they can't really necessarily they lose themselves in these multiple personalities. It used to be called multiple personality disorder. Now it's dissociative identity disorder. What's the difference? Is that nowadays you don't even have to display a different personality. If you just showcase that you disassociate from your actual identity, but who's the one who gets to determine what your identity is? That's the funny part. Who? Obviously, a therapist, right? The rapist, right? When you go to the therapist, you go to the rapist, quite literally. Just look at the name, I did not create the word therapist to be two words, the rapist, put together. Somebody else did that, right? So if you end up in front of the person with the clipboard, he will be like, oh, this person has been online, speaking like a rabbi, speaking like a rabbian, speaking like a barbecuer, speaking like an Arby's, speaking like one who prays. And don't forget, when you pray, it's like almost like the word rabbi, right? P-R-A-Y. But if you move a letter around, you flip the P into a B, you have a rabbi, right? So, this is very, very skeptical. A lot of these things, a lot of these words, they always triangulate back to the rabbi, right? The rabbit, right? And you have to remember that the rabbit, he likes to do a hippity hop, right? And then the Lucifer is like the rabbit, because he has loose fur and the hip hoppies, and we use the phrase F like a rabbit, right? We don't want this, right? I mean, only certain people at certain periods of time in certain places are allowed to do this and produce the children, and we are seeing it now in this point in time, that if you are incentivized by the government to have the babies, you have them. If you are disincentivized through the governmental process, then you do not have them. And therefore, we are left in a situation where only the very wealthy, due to the income the income gap in between the rich and the poor, can afford one or two. But the thing about it is they could afford a lot more, they just choose not to make the sacrifice. They need to have the Lexus and not the Projectus, you know what I mean, the Lexus and not the basic Toyota. They need to have the Rolex and not the basic G-Shock. They need to have the Argyle socks and not the basic Hanes, right? These are the people, they only get one or two, right? But if you are of a certain ethnicity, in a certain place, and they want to make it rise to the top, they give the incentivize to the person, to the government, subsidies, right? And the welfare system. So, with all of this into consideration, you see how they control and they handle how they want the population to move and groove, where they want it to grow and where they want it to slow. The problem is that the greed it sets in, and then you get the overflow of the populate, right? And then when you get the overflow of the populate in the certain places, and they don't want people to move outside of the certain places because they want to make sure that they collect all the taxes, so that the people at the top are skimming it off the top. Like, watch this. Why would we go and focus on moving people off the coastline into the middle of the country when we do not have all the control factors in place yet, right? Down the road, when the overflow has gotten crazy and we need people to move into the middle of the country, we will then create the chaos necessary across the coastline to get people to say, I do not want to be anywhere near the coastline because of the waves, because of the this, because of the attacks, and then they will move into the middle of the country. But until then, they've got everybody around the crust, and the pie is still variously empty, right? Because at this point, it's owned by mostly the China, right? We've been told. I mean, nothing, it could be false. I don't know. I have not looked at the records. But everybody's complaining that China owns most of the farmland in this country. And it's kind of interesting when you look at the amount of privately owned farms since 1890, right? Used to be owned by the Americans, and there would be smaller farms, that they could manage, manageable farms, right? That sector has rapidly deteriorated into large-scale farms, and most of them have struggled because of imports into this country of the fruits and vegetables that we need to be competitive. So, what they're doing, if you can't see, is they're trying to appease this leader and that leader in this country and that country to build it up, because the rich, they know about the currency conversion, that the dollar is worth a lot, and it can translate more into the Argentina when they make the economy go belly up, and then there is an incentive to build up the Argentina with the US dollar, or maybe the Mexican peso. At one time it was very low, and the Mexicans, they would come here, they would make in the money, and then they would bring it back to Mexico, and then they lived like a king. I mean, this kind of exists still to this day. I mean, in certain places. But this is why the BRICS is coming together and building their own fort, right? Because the BRICS is saying, like, look, if we just figure it out, and we just serving the needs of our countries, maybe there's 10, then we can go and we can tackle the dollar, right? So all we have to do is provocate the United States into like 10, 15 different wars, and Trump has already done the alienation in the European nations, and the European nation, they all have their own language, they're all under their own attack internally. Look at the Western countries. They're all under attack internally. They got the progressives against the conservatives, the far rights against the far lefts. And you look at the Eastern countries, and they're just like, let them kill each other from the inside out. And once they have their guard down, we will create the disruption and then create all-out war, and then the wars will be scattered all over the place, and then we decentralize the military attack of the United States, and then we can go in and we can destroy the Israel, which controls the United States, and then from there we take control of the United States, and then we replace the Congress with the new Congress, and then we do it over and over and over again, because ultimately the United States is 50 individual countries. That's what people don't see. We are Europe, the United States. We are the European Union. See, people don't look at it that way. The United States of America is like the European Union, right? They are various different countries, and in the United States, we are various different states. And there, they speak different languages, but here, we may as well speak different languages, because we carry ourselves different from state to state. We have different accents from state to state. When I'm down in the South and I'm talking to some people, I can't stand a word. I can't understand a word. I can't comprehend a word that they say. Sometimes they can't comprehend a word that I say, so we may as well be in another country at times, and they can't understand me, and I can't understand them, and I wouldn't understand them anyway. I would want to comprehend them, right? Because when you understand somebody, that is the beginning of standing under somebody. And you don't ever want to stand under anybody. You want to stand atop, right? Stand up for yourself, right? You don't want to understand anybody. But unfortunately, we had a government that was supposed to serve the people and be one nation under God, and we were all supposed to be sovereign gods. This was the original, but If you watch the most recent movie by the Kevin Costner, you're going to see the one that he made about the cowboy. I forget the name of it. He was the cowboy, and he shows the transition of when Americans were free and the feeder of all government came and overtook the people. It did not take very long. They agreed to form a government with the elites in the Articles of Confederation, which turned into the U.S. Constitution. And about within a year's time, within 100 years' time, they stripped away the farming. They began to strip it, and you sell off the pieces, right? And then the manufacturing, which had the blip of the baby boom era, other than that, they built up the American manufacturing. They crashed it in the Great Depression. They built it up again. But it's a push and pull. You have to understand. You build it up, you break it down. You build it up, you break it down. It all started in Sumer with the civilization. You see, this is the problem, is they want everybody civilized. Because when a person believes that you have to be civil and remain civil at all times, then you're following the religion of what is called Sybil, right? The god of Sybil, right? And Jesus, in the Bible, was based, the character, around the Melchizedek, and the Melchizedek, and the Jesus backwards is the sausage, right? So we have the Melchizedek, Melchizedek, and then you have the sausage, and it always goes back to the perversions, right, of the people, right? And I'm sure that the sausage will give you cheeses, right? Cheese! And when you see cheeses, you see Jesus, right? It's almost like Jesus, right? You see Jesus, right? And sometimes the J is like the H, and it's funny how they do this. Hey, because they need to make the codes and the cues for the very simpleton, right? So that they can figure it out, play the little Sudoku, whatever they need to figure it out. But most importantly, we understand the way that this is built is like an engine. You put it together, you take it apart, you put it together, you take it apart. It's the push and pull. They feel that they have created a system which is reflective of the universe, and it is the elites that they want to play God on the large level, or bring it all the way down to the simple level, and they use the very, very well-known star models, like the one that John the Baptist describes in Revelation 2:9. I suggest you look at that, as well as the pentagram that is the five-pointed star, right? And these are models that make people into stars. You want to be a star? No problem. We're going to make you a star, right? You're going to come into this, and then behind the scenes, we've got the whole thing going in the club, and then you could find me in the club, bottle full of bud, right? So they get all the bud, they get all the dub, they get all the awards, the ceremonies for their successful initiations and becoming the stars. They're not the stars in the public eye, but who cares about them? Because the public is really just what you call the bait, right? And they are the shark. And this is an important thing to understand, because if you're going to be the bait, then you want to be good bait. So when the shark comes in, you quickly move out of the way of the snapper, and then you hit it with the harpoon. Boom! You steal the shark. You understand that the shark is not to be understood, but actually to be dominated over, and you hit it with the harpoon, right? Boom, right? Now you have shark dinner, and so what happens in the world is, you walk through this world as I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, right? Which means that there is a hidden agenda each one of us walks, and we must be careful with the things that we say and do, and how we do it, and how we say it. And it's a push and pull to try and prevent yourself from being assassinated, killed off, Like, you don't want to, like, end up winning a free orphan on the Oprah Winfrey Show, right? Because things like this can be very detrimental to a person's health. But we are in a time of called the Great Awakening, and there's many people awakening to this. It's becoming the public inflammation that a lot of people are raising their consciousness. It is called the 100th monkey phenomenon, whereby we under the beautiful light of the sun are able to actually take ideas from people's brains, right? Take it from the brain, take it from the mouth, steal it from the mind, and share it. Give and take. Everything is a give and take, right? So, we have many people, and it's funny, right? Because the people who set this up, they set it up so that we would not have a complete extinction, right? They give a little bit of a ramp for the baddies to become the goodies, and the goodies to become the baddies, and it just goes back and forth, right? So you just try your best to be as good of a person as possible, because you have the individual courts behind the scenes, and then you have the courts in the public, and there are courts that you don't see that take place where the gods judge you and determine whether you belong in the Mind Camp. Hitler's book Mind Camp, which is like Mind Camp, a mind camp, which is a concentration camp. You don't want to end up there. I suggest you move far away from any forts, right? Because Abel, he was comfortable, right? You don't want to be able to come to a fort. You want to move away from the fort, right? And get away from any of the forts, because they always said to take the road less traveled, and you don't want to travel near a fort. Unfortunately, they manipulated me and put me near the biggest fort, right? Of course, we're going to be riding him hard until we get him to a fort. And then we get him to the biggest fort of all, then we're going to make sure he's comfortable, right? So then now you have to move on, because you see that you don't want to be a brother and end up in a stew art, right? You know what the stew art is? It's when they create the spiritual cooking and they put you into the pot, and then it becomes a work of art in the process as they make you into the stew, because the stew is nice, it preserves the body, but it extracts the soul. It's called a distillation, right? So in the pot, it's like making the liquor, right? So they put you into the pot, they stew up your essence, they purify it, envision the spirit of humanity coming into the gas, and then from the gas, they put you into the chiller, and then when you chill, your essence becomes the liquid, and then that is the holy water in which they drink it, right? So you don't want this. You do not want to end up in the distillation pot, so stay away from the places as steward, because you do not want to be a brother who ends up in the stew art. What you want to do is you want to live. And at the end of your life, blow yourself up with a bomb, so that they cannot actually eat you in your best, so that they cannot suck you dry, cannot put you on machines and drip you and bleed you out. It's very important that when you leave, you go out with a bang, right? So for me, my goal in life is simply to make enough money to end it all in a with a Moab for myself. I strap it to myself, and I jump off the cliff so I don't hurt anybody, and I end up in the water, and I feed the fish, but not the fools, right? Anyway, have a good day. Not...